Hi, and welcome if you're joining us for the first time, and if you're seeing us live or on the replay. My name is Robin Forster, and I am with Feel So Alive and Feel So Alive Informed. And I am always trying new things, so we'll see how this goes today. And I just wanted to tell you a little bit about how our program runs so that you'll have an idea. I have two different guests that I pull in. It's a Zoom recording that I've done ahead of time because you know we are in the era of anything that can possibly mess up probably will. So I'm trying to prevent that as much as possible. Our first guest is a healer. She'll be on for about 10 minutes, and then I have a little health tip in between, and then our second guest comes on for 10 minutes, and then that's the end of the program, and I appreciate you being here. So let's go ahead and get started, but before we do, the world is a little weird right now. I know we all know, so we don't need to go into that, but I know it hurts our hearts. And so I would like to see us do 30 seconds of just taking a gentle moment, thinking about if you do prayer, if you do blessings, whatever it is that's comfortable for you, white light. Let's just go ahead and spend 30 seconds and send some good juice out to the universe and to the world, because I think it needs it. So I'm going to go ahead and start the timer. Thank you very much for doing that with me. I know that that's going to help. And I'm also trying something else new today. I've been trying to figure out how to keep the flow of the program, the words that I'm going to say, how to keep them where I can actually see them, because it's a lot more helpful. And so right now I have them on the side of my monitor. So cross your fingers. Let's see if that really works. So first of all, I wanted to tell you a little bit about our two guests today. The first one, a healer, is Amy Kubanek, and I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, and she worked on me to help me to pronounce it right. Anyway, she's really a fascinating healer and all about movement, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. And then our second one is our business person is Bowden, and she has a fascinating way of looking at the whole cash flow issues in small businesses. So I'm really excited for you to hear both of them, and as we usually do at the end of their interviews, they're going to share a number of different tips and techniques and things that we can use right away. So let's go ahead and get started. And our first healer is Amy. Hi, I'm Robin Forster with Feel So Alive and Feel So Alive Informed. And today I have a very special guest that I want to share with you. So Amy, say hi to everybody.
Hello, hello.
Excellent. So I met Amy through networking, and we started talking about health because I'm into health and wellness. And so Amy was sharing with me some of what she was doing, and I said, oh, Amy, we have to do an interview. I need to share your tools and your techniques with the world because it's kind of awesome, and we all need more help with our bodies during this era in our lives. So Amy, just a little bit about her, and then I'll let her tell you more. And the reason I'm looking down is because I have my notes, and I want to make sure that I don't miss something. So Amy was trained as a professional dancer, and as a kid, my mother tried to help me learn how to dance, and there are just some things that I should not be allowed to do. So I really, really appreciate someone who has that as part of who they are, because it's an awesome skill to have. And then after doing professional dancing, she also became a Pilates teacher. And that I was really fascinated about because I've taken some Pilates classes on and off over the years and really loved them. So needless to say, Amy is into movement and into the body. And what we're going to talk about some today is about trauma, because we all are during this stressful time in the world while we're on pause depending on your point of view. So, Amy, why don't you start off by telling us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Thank you. I'm an embodied strength coach, and so I work with people mostly one-on-one to connect with their sensations. Our sensations tell us a lot about what our beliefs are, and they also tell us a lot about what's happening in our environment. And what happens is that when we are going through a stressful time, um, a, the response that a lot of us have is to numb out. We it's sort of like that sensation becomes too much, or the emotion becomes too much, and we just sort of feel like we need to put it somewhere else. But the problem is that our body doesn't just let it go at that point. It holds on to that feeling until you go back to it again. So through yeah. So it's really important that we keep a relationship with our body and with our sensation. And that's what I'm here for, is to help. I work primarily with women and people who identify as women, to have a meaningful relationship with their body.
That sounds so fascinating because, on one hand, I'm thinking, well, of course, I have a relationship with my body because we hang out together all the time. And then on the other hand, I know some folks, one I'm thinking of that I won't name, who it does not have much awareness of his body.
Yeah.
And what hurts or what feels, or all those things. And sometimes I look at him and it's, how can you not know? But people don't. So that's part of why I was drawn to you and wanted to share that, because we all need it, and I know in my life I need it more. So okay, so this is awesome. I'm excited. Okay, so tell us a little bit about how you got drawn into dance and Pilates and into trauma work and the whole body thing.
Yeah. Well, the main thing is that I'm a kinesthete. So that's a learning style, right? It's like some people are more visual, some people are more auditory. But I learned through doing. I learned through my body. And so that's why I think I gravitate towards dance and all of those, I've studied many different forms of movement. So through dance, I've also studied somatic practices, which really just means of the body, and they tend to be more slow, more kind of therapeutic practices. But I've also then been studied more in the body science realm of our own physiology or biology, a lot of anatomy, and just learning about the ins and outs of how we're put together. Pilates is a very specific style, like it's a very specific technique of training. And I, it always struck me as I was teaching people and I was learning it for myself, how like that I would see that disconnect in people. And my rational mind was just sort of like, well, why can't they just, I'm telling them this is where they need to move, but they can't seem to, their brain doesn't seem to be connected to that part of their body. And in fact, sometimes, you would ask someone, say, where their pain is, and they would say, or they would just sort of point to a spot, like maybe, my pain is right here. It's like right at my head, and you're okay. um, and that, that was always a big question of like, what is really happening here? So, going through then years, that was like an underlying question that I had through my journey, and then going through my own healing journey led me to to find the deeper inner workings of how trauma shows up in the body, and how that affects how we show up in the world and are able to inhabit our body.
You know, that is so fascinating. I was sharing a little bit with you before we started recording that I have trigeminal neuralgia, and it's just been kicking my butt. And usually we're kind of frenemies. And a lot of it, I think, is the stress and the trauma. And so when you were talking about trauma in our bodies, it was like, oh, we need to tell the world, because I know I'm not the only one that is increasing my pain, and that's not what I have in mind. So I need some new skills, some new tips. So tell us about trauma in our body and what we can do, because it's a stressful time. I mean, there's no other way to be but traumatic and stressed out, and because that's just what the world is right now. I mean, that's how the energy is in the world. So share lots with us.
Well, that's a very big topic, Robin.
Yeah, in like 5 minutes or less.
Yeah, I'm definitely not going to be able to fit that into 10-minute conversation. I maybe want to point you to two really great resources. One is one of my teachers who has a ton of videos on YouTube. Her name is Irene Lyon, and she's very good at explaining the biology, the physiology of how stress works. The other is a great book that came out recently. I have it in the other room, otherwise I'd show it to you right now. It's called Burnout, and it's by Emily and Amelia Nagoski, and they do a really great job of giving in plain language how, and just it's really easily digestible how it works. You know, one of the main things is that we think that our brain, our logical mind thinks that, you know, you have a problem, you have something that's stressing you out. Well, if you get rid of the thing that stresses you out, then your problem is solved. But our physiology actually needs us to physically complete whatever that feeling is before it can move on and let go.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Huh, because I know about the whole concept about, circle back around and close the open loops, and, and I think even in the AA world, they have the making amends. So it's going back and cleaning up, whatever you need to with relationships. So there's a lot of that in the world, but I never thought about it in terms of my body and my trauma. And okay, so talk to us about how we can do that. And you're right, we only have about 3 minutes left. I'm watching the clock. So what are maybe some tips and techniques that people can take away from this that they can use?
I'm going to lead you through a really quick exercise. Okay. Yeah. So what I want you to do is make sure that you're seated comfortable. If that means you need to change where your hands are or just how you're sitting, go ahead and do that. We're going to start with a very simple body scan. And this is just for you. It's not for you to change anything. It's simply for you to get a picture of what's happening inside your body right now. If we had more time now, this could be a longer process. You could make it a whole 10 minutes, just the body scan. But for right now, we're going to keep it simple at around 30 seconds or so. Okay, so you're going to start with whatever contact points you have with something, right? So if you're sitting, it's going to be your sit bones in your seat, which may include the back of your pelvis. May include the back, some part of your back on your chair, and likely it's going to be some part of your foot. So just notice those parts first off. Notice how much weight you have in those areas. And then scan up through all of the other joints in the body. I like to go from the bottom to the top, but there's no right way to do it. So if I'm going from the bottom to the top, I'm going to go through my ankles, my knees, my hips. I might pause at my pelvis for a little while, and then I'm going to go up through the spine and all of the curves through the spine. And just notice that. Then we're going to do something a little different. I always love going to the feet because the feet are our foundation. So I invite you really quickly, if you've got shoes on, to take them off. If you want to do this bare feet, go ahead and take off your socks, but if you can do it with your socks on. What we're going to do is we're going to slap and clap the sole of your feet.
How interesting.
Now, it's part of a longer, like what I would do for a foot massage. And it's a really great way, especially early in the morning, just to give your feet a little extra stimulation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm watching the clock, and we're kind of up against the edge of how much time you have today. So after we slap our feet, what, 2 or 3 times, and it's a gentle slap, right? It's a wake-up slap.
Actually, the foot can withstand quite a lot of pressure, so feel free to go ahead. I'm just gonna back up my seat for a second here so I can show you. I'm flexible, so.
Interesting. Okay.
Once you do that, it's nice to do a quick check-in between feet, and you'll notice a difference from one foot to the other. But after doing both feet, once you do your body scan again, you'll notice sensation that wasn't there before.
Awesome.
Yeah, and so this is a great tool. Being able to continually check in with how you're doing it's a very important tool for then being able to develop this sensing.
Neat. Oh, Amy, this has been so good. And watching the clock, we're kind of over the amount of time you were willing to give. Really appreciate it. And I think we're going to have you come back because this was, we just scratched the surface.
Yeah, you did.
Oh, thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Wasn't that amazing what Amy was talking about? And as usual, of course, there was some problems with the audio. It looked like it was the audio video on my side. She seemed to be fine, but that is how it goes. And I've also noticed that for some reason I have an error on loading comments. So for those of you who are replying and wondering why I'm not saying anything, that would be why. I have an error, of course. The next thing I wanted to share, the tip, is that I was just listening to Dr. Brous, and he is a chiropractor, an amazing man, incredible information, very, very well-read and knowledgeable. And he's at the Sunnyside Health Clinic that he started years ago. But he was talking about vitamin D, and I wanted to share that information with you because it's really, really important. And it's really simple and easy. You know, they talk about whenever you're going to make a change, you want to start with the smallest, easiest, and in some cases, the least expensive, or, what's called low-hanging fruit. And this is one of those. So let me bring this slide up and talk you through it. So what we're looking at is we're talking about vitamin D. We all know about vitamin D. We all know that we need it. For those of us in the Northwest or north of the equator even, we're not going to get quite enough vitamin C. Vitamin D. It's a sunshine vitamin. So I wanted to share with you some foods that were high in D because that's always our first go-to whenever we're trying to get healthy is what are we eating? What are we not eating? And then is our gut working so we can absorb it? But what they've been finding is over 120 scientists and medical experts around the world have called for an increase of vitamin D up to about 4,000 international units because the virus, and we all know which one we're talking about here, cannot invade a cell that is protected by vitamin D. Now, I had no idea, so I have increased my vitamin D because why not? It's not very expensive and it seems like such a cheap way to take care of our health. And what the scientists are talking to is the governments all over the world are saying, hey, listen, this is a really inexpensive way to help people protect themselves, and especially those who are really vulnerable. So why not go for this? And for those of you who know me, you know that it's always science first. And when someone says, something amazing, it's like, I want to know why, I want to know how, I want to know where the research and the science is. And so this slide wasn't big enough for me to include that, but please feel free to get in touch with me. I'm more than happy to give you the links, or you can go to Dr. Browse's Coffee Talk, and that's on Facebook, and that's at the Sunnyside Health Clinic that he's got. And he's got the links there. And you can also hear, it's about a 5-minute talk that he does talking about vitamin D and what it does. So I had to share that and let you all know because it's super important. And and the other thing is we're talking about vitamin D3 because it's basically non-toxic from what Dr. Browse was saying. Vitamin D2 is the synthetic form, not necessarily. So go for the natural form, which is the D3. And if you have more questions, please feel free to get in touch with me. And on with our program. So our next guest is Dee Bowden, and she is really fascinating. I had never thought of collections in a positive way before. I've always thought of it as, the stories of people having their cars repossessed and, all those kinds of things. And Dee's point of view is very, very different. It was just fascinating. She lives in Maryland, and she is on a mission to serve businesses to solve their cash flow problems. And she was also featured recently in Forbes magazine in an article December 12th, 2020 issue. So if you can, look that up. I'm guessing it's online. But let's go ahead and hear from Dee. Okay, we're recording to the cloud. There we go. Hi, I'm Robin Forster from FeelSoAlive and FeelSoAlive Informed. And I have a very interesting and special guest today that I'm excited to share with you all. And this is Dee Bowden, and she's from Maryland. And she has a very different background that I think we're all, as small businesses and medium-sized businesses, going to appreciate. Not only does she have a master's degree, but she's worked in the corporate world, in IT, and also engineering and in government contracts. And I should tell you, I'm looking down at my questions just to make sure that I cover all the important things. So Dee, do you want to say hi to everybody?
I'd like to say it this way. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you listen to this fabulous podcast around the world. I am Dee Bowden. I'm the founder and CEO of BCS Solutions. Thank you, Robin, so much for the opportunity to talk to your audience.
Oh, well, thank you, Dee. I'm excited to have you here because this is an area that we haven't talked about at all. And I know it's really important, so I was so glad to meet you the other day and just go, yes, this would be perfect.
Absolutely.
Okay, so the first question that I'm going to ask you is if you would take a few minutes and tell us a little bit about you. I just briefly glossed over your background, but so people have a better sense of where you're coming from and how you've learned all these things that you know now.
Well, great question. So who I am, I'm Dee Bowden. I'm the founder, again, and CEO of BCS Solutions. I'm originally from Boston. I now live in Maryland. Fun facts about me. I love smooth jazz, hot air balloon rides, and Ferris wheels. My career has been in contract administration. So every time you're in business, whether it's small, medium, or large, you usually have a contract or agreement for what you do. And then I deal with the end part, which is collecting the money. So most people have a sales, they have an order entry or a deliverable of some sort. And then there's that sticky part called collections. And that's the part I live in. And I love it because collections is three things. It's problem solving, number one. Number two is an extension of customer service. Then my personal favorite is expressing gratitude.
Nice, because I think when we think about collections, we always think about all those stereotypes of yucky and middle of the night repoing cars and, that kind of thing. So I'm really excited that you can help us see that there's another side to it that is not yucky.
True, and I'm so glad you said that because one of the challenges in terms of talking about collections is that let me state this. There's two types of collections. So what you said about the yucky, the repo, That's called consumer collections, and it doesn't necessarily have to be that way. It just so happens that that's the reputation that some people have exuded toward it. But there's consumer collections, which is basically your medical bills, your cell phone, your cable. There's people that are calling you because you owe them for your product, for their product or their service. That's consumer collections. I'm in what's called business to business collections, which is basically if you come from a corporate background, you probably are familiar with a chief financial officer or a comptroller, and I would be the person that reported to him or her, and I'm responsible for interacting with the vendors who have provided a product or a service, and I need to figure out how come you haven't paid us in the nicest way possible, along with building the relationship, solving the problem, extending customer service, and like I said, my secret sauce is gratitude.
Well, and that's so important in this wonky year that we're in and going into the next year, because I'm guessing that there's a lot of vendors who are trying very hard, but they're hard hit. And so there's even more issues going on now than before with collections.
Oh, absolutely. And I think it's because when we came into 2020, like most of us do, you think, oh, I've got my calendar laid out for first quarter, second quarter, third, fourth. This sale will come in. I've always worked with this customer. We've never had a problem. And all of a sudden, COVID hit, and now all of a sudden, what you thought would be all these sales would come through. The payment, the deliverables or products would go out. The payments you'd bill, and then the payments would come in. All of a sudden, everything switched because if you had to ship something, if you were used to shipping things in 2 days, it took 10 days. And so the domino effect happened of what was normally have the sale, process the contract, process the order, bill for it, get paid. A real short cycle has gone longer. And unfortunately, because of COVID, what should have taken, say, 10 days has now become 30 days, it's become 45 days, it's gone on and on and on. And unfortunately, if you're a small business, if you don't get your sales in, you don't get your cash flow in, you can't pay yourself, you can't pay your staff, you can't do what you need to do. And unfortunately, people have ignored those sales because they're like, oh, I'll get to it, and I'll get to it. Unfortunately, it's turned into we have to close our doors or we don't have enough money to stay open, and you're seeing companies go out of business unfortunately because of that. And it bothers me because it's like it didn't have to be that way, but because the end part of your sales cycle is what is the part that you ignore. It's the one that's actually the most costly.
You know, I've been learning that as a small business that the numbers really are our friends,
They are.
even though we don't always feel that way. I'm speaking personally,
Yeah.
but so, but it's. I appreciate you explaining the ripple effect because I think we don't always consider that. We just kind of see what we can see and don't get what else is going on. Okay, so you've told us a little bit about how you got drawn into this work. Is there anything else that you want to share before you get into some of your tips? And I know you brought some friends that
I
you
did bring
wanted
some
to.
friends.
I am dying to hear and to see what you do with these friends.
Okay, so what Robin is talking about, as I before we went live, I said I have these three friends, and so let me introduce my friends. So if you're a small business, you may have this much money that's owed to you. If you've scaled, you may have this much money that's owed to you. Or if you've really scaled, you've got large amounts of contracts that are owed to you. So what I'd like to show you is that basically your cash flow could be at this level, or this level. And I say that I bring my friends out to make this point is because there are sometimes when I'm talking to small business owners, they say, "Oh, well, D, when I hear how much money you've collected in the millions of dollars, I don't have millions of dollars as outstanding. Why would I come talk to you?" And I came up with the whether you have a little bit, it could be this much, it could be this much. It doesn't matter. The point is that the principles are still the same. You still have to solve the problem of how come you haven't gotten paid. I personally believe that collections is problem solving. Number one, it's an extension of customer service. Number two, and number three, it's gratitude. People keep asking me all the time, why do you say gratitude? Well, I personally believe that you thank your customers for doing business with you. If you look at it right now, it's the end of 2020. Most companies, depending upon what size they are, have been sending out cards all year, well, especially since probably like Thanksgiving. Thank you for being our customer. We appreciate you being a loyal customer all year long, et cetera. What are they doing? They're doing customer service because they want to thank you for being a customer this year, and they want to make sure that you're going to stay with them for the next year. And so It's the same principle in your business. If I ordered 10 sneakers from you and I only have 8, if you are doing business with me and you want to make sure I'm happy, you're going to want to talk to me about, well, D, I'm so sorry you didn't get all your sneakers. Let me get you your other pair. And I might throw in something extra because I want to make sure you're happy with my service and you're going to do repeat business. What are you doing? Customer service, solving the problem. And I think this the sweet sauce is gratitude.
Nice. That was so nicely explained. And then you got my brain thinking about what it is that I want to send out in a postcard in January. So thank you.
You're
That
welcome.
was helpful. And let's we have a few more minutes, and I know that you have some gifts or some tips that you would like to share. So let's do that now.
Okay. Well, thanks, Robin. So, listen, if you're a small business owner, small or medium, it doesn't matter. If you are struggling with collecting your cash, I'd like to offer you this free tip. It's actually called five steps to collect your cash. You can go to www.collectthecash.biz. That's www.collectthecash.biz, and there's a free PDF. You put your first name, last name, email, and you can download it right then. So again, it's www.collectthecash.biz, and it's a free gift. It's actually called secure your 5 steps I'm sorry, 5 steps to secure your cash flow, aka collect the cash. It's a free PDF. It gives you 5 simple tips that show you what to do, how to track your accounts, how to follow up, how to identify the easier ones, and then my favorite two are writing it down and of course celebrating when you get the win.
I like that. That is excellent. And you did that so concisely. We still have a few more minutes. Is there anything else that you would like to share that can help medium businesses, small to medium businesses?
Sure. And you know, if we've got a couple minutes, how about I tell the story about how all of this came to be?
Yeah.
All right. So I'm originally from Boston, as I said. And so about 15 years ago, I used to work for a small IT firm outside of Boston, where I'm from. And I got hired by the collections department to actually come in and collect this money. So you can imagine if you ever worked for any company, small, medium, or large, they bring you on board, they welcome you, and they bring you to your cubicle, and they go, "Hey, welcome aboard." You meet all the team, and I'm like, "Okay, great." I go sit in my cubicle, and then they said, "Listen, we've got some outstanding accounts that have been sitting for a long time, and we need you to get to work." I'm like, "Okay, cool." Well, I didn't know that they had $8 million worth of outstanding accounts. I thought it was just a little bit. They're like, "No, it's this much." I'm like, "What?" So kind of where my friends come in about how much you have in collections is this size, or this size. I came in with the jumbo size off the brink. So I've had sit in my cubicle. I've got $8 million of outstanding sales in the IT firms. So they sold software licenses and computers and all kinds of products. So I said a short prayer because I happen to be a believer, said my prayer, kind of went like this: "Hey, God, yes, D, how are you? I'm good. Need your help because I've got this $8 million problem. I don't know how to solve it and I need a clue." So I got quiet, I got my clue, and I'm like, "Oh, I discovered that the reason these accounts have been sitting so long is that nobody figured out that there was a problem." And that's where the whole thing about my business collections is problem solving, customer service, and gratitude. So when I figured out what the problems were, I was able to build the relationships over the phone and collect $6 million in 60 days while working part time. Now, at this point, you're like, "Oh my gosh, that's amazing." That's true. But what drives me to do what I do today is because around October, at the end of October, the CEO of the company says, "Listen, let's come downstairs and have a chat." I'm like, "Mm-mm." Now, I'll be honest. The first time I thought, okay, we're gonna get a bonus because I'm thinking, yes, we made our quota. No, we come downstairs and he says, "Listen, I want to thank everybody for the services across sales, contracts, order entry, invoicing, and my lane collections. We've made an executive decision. We're closing the business. You've got 30 minutes to go get your stuff, and this is 2 months before Christmas." Now that was 15 years ago, but in 2020 we have the same things going on, except they're not having these long conversations. Doors are just closing. You go show up to work, and all of a sudden there's a sign that says we're out of business. And because of me working for a small business, I decided to create my company to teach small business owners not to neglect their sales on the front end, but most importantly, to remember the sale is not complete until the money is actually in the bank. That company went out of business in part because they didn't collect all their cash flow. But number two, there were mistakes made. I'll never know. I was an employee, I was a part time employee, but I have enough sense to know that when you neglect the processes across all the things that matter in your business, which is sales and marketing and contracts and billing and then pay and receivables, you can sleep on those things and think, oh yeah, I've got all these sales, when you actually don't. This company fell asleep and thinking they had $8 million worth of sales on the books, yes, but the money wasn't in the bank. And unfortunately, even though we made our quota, we didn't do enough to save the company. And from that day to this, I've been on the journey to talk about why this is so important, and for you to manage your cash flow, track it, and when you see a problem, don't neglect it, address it.
Wow. Indeed, this is amazing. This is really good. I appreciate this, and I'm watching the clock because I know that you have another commitment. Now, do you have a course that you have put out that people can take so that they can figure this out?
Absolutely. The class is actually called Collect the Cash, and it'll give you the 5 things you'll learn: how to set goals, identify easy accounts, work on your mindset, believe you can collect it, write it down, and then affirm it. And you can find that course at www.collectthecash.biz. That's www.collectthecash.biz.
That's perfect. So you've got the freebie that they can download right there, and then
Yes.
you also have a course that's available.
Absolutely.
Perfect. Dee, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
This has just been fascinating. Oh,
Absolutely.
I appreciate your
It's
time.
my pleasure.
Well, thank you all very much for joining us, and I just want to let you know that we are usually the second and fourth Thursdays at 1 p.m. Pacific Time, 4 p.m. Eastern Time. Our next dates are February 11th and the 25th, and then March 11th and the 25th. Don't forget to please like us. I know that's going away. It's now going to be a follow on Facebook at FeelSoAlive Marketing Group, and I just typed out MKGP because who wants to type out the whole marketing group? And don't forget to subscribe and to click the bell on YouTube so that you will get notified when our next video drops. So thank you very much for your time. Have a fabulous day and take care of yourself. Thanks. Bye-bye.